Copy is only important when person who actually is looking for your product lands on your ad. Usually we can process images about 60,000 times faster than text, but they've done a lot of studies, tons of studies about the fact that the motivation of the person reading the ad will affect the effectiveness of the ad. Your copy matters a lot. Changing like one little word, especially if it's something that doesn't pertain to the overall message, doesn't really matter all that much. I heard a lot of people talk about, well, we've got like 19% conversion like lift off of just changing these hearts to stars. You're going to hear those like random one-offs that happen all the time. But overall, I think the important part of the ad and the creative itself is actually the image first and then the messaging second. Copy, I should say, not the best.
All right, folks, welcome back to your favorite D2C podcast. Apologies on the sound. The mic got lost in the luggage. I'm here using AirPods. I'm actually out at Columbus HQ, but we've actually missed a couple episodes for some scheduling issues, so we had to get one on. And of course, when we knew we need to make it up to you, what are we going to do? We're going to bring on the bestest guest ever, Sarah Levinger. Sarah, thank you for joining me and Ash on
You're so nice.
Adspend. Milwani,
Thank you.
how
I'm
was your
super
Black
excited
Friday?
to talk to you guys. This is like
Black Friday. It was good. I mean, I spoke about this before. For us, it was more of a retention play than anything else. Our Black Friday is probably going to be around the corner, January 1st, where everyone's more into the health and wellness, instead of eating at Thanksgiving and over the holidays. So, focused pretty heavily on retention, did a few product launches and did really well. Actually pulled a study today to see, all the people that we acquired this year, how many of those people actually came back, and digging into that and seeing what we can do better next year. But yeah, I mean, right now, December is a tough time as well. Slower period, gift giving and things like that. So trying to prep for 2023 at the moment. But yeah, I mean, all is good over here.
Amazing. Well, we were actually talking offline. One way to kind of measure how things are going outside of more of a qualitative measurement, if you will, than a quantitative measurement is consumer confidence. And Sarah is crazy into all of the studies, all of the trackings, all the reports. So what is the consumer confidence kind of looking like right now? And how do we think it's going to manifest in terms of December? So there's a big gift giving vertical in December, obviously for all the holidays. And then how do you think it's actually going to manifest in the kind of Q1 2023 new year, new you type of stuff? Give us the deets there.
Yeah. So the consumer confidence index basically tracks where the consumers sit basically emotionally about how they feel about what's happening in the country right now, specifically for the US. They track other markets as well. But the one that I keep the biggest tabs on, the closest tabs on is the US market. And it's slowly dropping, which basically means that the consumers are not loving the state of the country, especially when it comes to like the economy itself. So recently we just saw like a tiny little jump in gas prices, which affects everything from, how people get to work, how they, where they drive, how often they drive, those type of things. But that also can affect how they feel about the entire state of the economy in general. So we saw that drop a few points. I think it dropped from like 77.5 down to like 75.2, which doesn't sound like a lot. But when we see these drops on the consumer confidence index, usually that means that the consumers are going to start to kind of like protect their cash. They get a little hoardy with their money, which is really interesting because they're coming right off of this huge splurge of spend on Black Friday in particular, and then on Christmas, two of like the highest purchasing holidays outside of Valentine's Day. It's interesting to watch. They have a couple different other indexes that track things like, just outside of how the consumers feel about the economy. But this one in particular, I think is important to track from an e-commerce standpoint, just because it'll tell you kind of how the consumers are going into the next year. This year was volatile. Like we saw a whole lot of crazy stuff changing with the consumers, especially since we saw a huge uptick in the differences in how we market to them. They started to tell us kind of what they wanted and how they were viewing the marketing that was coming out. So lots of volatility this year. Next year is kind of a Wild West as well. I feel bad. I don't want to bring like a ton of negativity to the conversation, but I'm like, this isn't a good thing. It's kind of a scary thing, honestly. But caveat, it's not rare. Anytime we have this weird like conversation in the country talking about a recession, you're going to see a lot of loss on the consumer index just because it's very well connected. People get freaked out. So they start to just be more careful with how they spend and what they spend their money on.
Yeah, you definitely can feel a little bit of the pearl clutching, but anecdotally for me, I've felt that and historically as well, there's been usually after a midterm election, there's usually a big influx and kind of up and to the right for the economy. Things do well, the stock market bounces back. It's usually a good inflection point to peg off of where we just have the midterms. But yeah, I definitely see your point in terms of making sure. And so, with that in mind, what are you thinking, Ash, in terms of like, is your targeting going to change? Is your messaging going to change? Like, how are you going to alleviate some of this anxiety that could be being caused by these macro events, economic events?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of our messaging has switched over to the buy now, pay later. Um,
Oh,
we use
interesting.
Afterpay. We do have a good amount of customers that are utilizing, buy now, pay later, whatever you may use, Shop Pay, Afterpay, PayPal, whatever it is. Especially in our ads, what we've noticed is kind of including that on some of the graphics or even like in our videos. Some of the CTAs like, buy now, pay later, split up your payments, whatever. Um, or like start today for $10, right? So like if the collagen is like $40, start today for $10, right? So it's like at least easing somebody into it without having to think like, oh, I gotta front this cash up front. Um, I think that's a lot of what the messaging is going to be moving forward. We did also pull some data based off of the consumers that were using Afterpay, and interesting enough that the AOV was higher, the LTV was higher, the conversion rate was higher.
Really?
So yeah, which was, I mean, it makes sense, right? If you can buy more, but the upfront payment is a lot less on day one, you're probably going to do that, right? So that's why we're trying to lean a little bit more into that, so that one, it's not like I got to spend $100 right now. I can parse it up over the next 4 weeks, and see if that could be a way to kind of alleviate some of the stress and I guess the pain points of right now, right? What we're pretty much discussing. But yeah, I mean, other than that, like super interested to hear what Sarah, has to say about what brands should be doing, when it comes down to things like this.
I mean, yeah, I have a ton that I could share with you, just like tips and tricks and hacks and things. Overall, I think it's probably more beneficial for brands to understand what they should focus on for 2023. And this was something I posted on a lot. And again, I feel bad because I feel like I'm a pretty positive person, but I'm always the one that has to be like, sorry guys, this is not at all what we're gonna do. We're gonna bring lots of negativity to it. Um, 2023, I think, is going to be difficult for some brands because a lot of them are not prepared for what they're going to have to do, what they're going to be required to do to be able to win in 2023 and beyond. Not just from a paid standpoint, but from a branding standpoint. Avi is one of the few brands that I've seen that actually has dug into their brand really, really well. And Triple Well, actually. You guys both do like a super fantastic job. And this was something I talked to Alexa about a little while ago, was the fact that your brand starts with the people that build it, right? So every personality that you bring into your brand will kind of seek out and like leak into what your brand puts out to the consumers. So in 2023, I think it's going to be super important for brands to remember that the consumers are a little nervous and that we've been hearing a recession for a long time. So everybody's kind of on edge about where their money's going and what's going to happen in the next couple of years, especially. So we take that and we wrap it into our message of branding from a standpoint of we get that, right? We have to recognize the issues that are happening first before we can message to the fears that already exist. So it's really important for these brands to come in and understand we are purchasing from a fear-based standpoint. We're not in a positive, we're in a negative kind of mindset. Now, again, that's a generalized statement. Not everybody's going to shop in a negative statement. But overall, this is kind of what we're seeing from the consumers. So 2023 is going to require a lot more of this empathetic recognition of the feelings that the consumers are going through with or without your brand involved. Like this is just what they're dealing with on a daily basis. So empathy, I think, is going to be pretty important.
Oh, interesting. So in terms of that, and I like the idea of kind of the seepage. I think that's really interesting where you do get these kind of knock-on effects of when you have kind of the faces of the brand, like there's just implicit derivations of that. But the idea of empathy is really, really interesting. So in terms of, I mean, it's always you're supposed to do what's best for the customer. Everybody kind of knows that, blah, 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 create value for the customer, et cetera, et cetera. But kind of just drilling down a layer deeper, like how would you, so if you were advising Rabah's Widget Factory and we're going into 2023 and we still want to hit our growth goals, but you're telling me that there's going to be some headwinds because of macroeconomic factors, et cetera, and you're saying the way we get to growth is through empathy. How would that manifest in like either a strategic plan or like tactics that we would actually like rubber meets the road?
Yeah. Yeah. So implementation. This is a question I get all the time. Like, okay, cool, Sarah, that sounds great. Kind of woo woo, wonderful. We love empathy. Thanks for that. How do we do that? And this was something that I originally had no idea. People asked me and I was like, I don't know. Um, Luckily, I've had the last kind of 18 months to formulate a formula around it and actually create a framework. So one of the things that I'm very, very strong at is soaking up other people's emotions. It was terrible when I was a child. It's fantastic as an adult because I can figure out pattern recognition is what I'm really good at. Anybody that's really, really empathetic is very good at pattern recognition. So I can basically spot trends in things that nobody else can spot, which is really weird. Very odd trait to have and not useful in anything other than paid advertising. So from a framework standpoint, we have to figure out what emotions your customers are currently going through. The best place to do that is to pull from your comments and reviews. We talk about this a lot. There's got to be real-time data. I don't want to grab anything that's from 3 years ago because that's basically useless. I need something that's within the last 6 weeks. The last month would be better. Sometimes we have to pull it out where it's like the last 3 months to 6 months. But even 3 months ago, very different landscape that these people were shopping in than now. So pull some data from somewhere recent and then just, read and read and read. Highlight as many different pieces as you can. You're trying to pull out specific things. For our agency on our side, we're trying to pull out 3 different core motivators. So we try and look for anything that's like a triggering event. And usually, especially on reviews, people will tell you, we just bought a house. We just bought a puppy. I just moved, those type of things. There's something that happened in their life that changed the trajectory of where they were going. Then we'll look for emotional motivators. So this pertains to language analysis. We're trying to pull out phrases that we can basically categorize into one emotion. So if we see a lot of the words like gross, disgusting, awful, those type of things, that means something. We have to be able to pull those out and double check and track that data to see, okay, what does this mean globally? And especially if we see it in hundreds of thousands of comments, that means something in particular. One of the brands that we were working with closely had, they were in athleisure. So they had a ton of comments that kept coming out with the word comfort, comfortable, or comfy, which is 3 iterations of the same word. So that in particular is really interesting. We have to pull that data out and use it to create some sort of basically a profile of the customer's emotional status. Once you've done all of this collecting of data and actually created your profile, then you can go through and say, my customer really wants to belong somewhere, or my customer is really interested in getting notoriety. They want to feel good about people wanting to be around them, or they really want freedom, autonomy. We have 9 different emotional categories. So then we go ahead and choose the ones that are coming up the most frequently. And then from there, we can actually generate messaging, not just for paid advertising, but for the brand as a whole. And this is where the empathy actually kind of gets implemented into the actual system. We have to know which emotion to go after first. But as soon as we know that, then we can actually start building brand around it.
I love that. There's a few things. So I want to unpack a few things and I'll toss it over to you, Ash. One, I love the idea of a triggering event that is essentially that version of that person is now almost in a way like a triggering event can be transformative. Right? Like their life is no longer the same. Pre-puppy,
Oh, yeah.
post-puppy, pre-kid, post-kid, pre-being broke, post-being broke. These things can have really massive
Yeah.
impacts on every decision you make in your life, especially economically. Everything kind of rolls back to the money. So that's really interesting. And then I love the idea of understanding the emotional motivators. I think that's a really, really great connotation. And then slotting that in to then understand, hey, how can I talk to, it's very similar to kind of like a jobs to be done framework, right? Or you're understanding like what job is this person hiring the product to
Yeah,
do? And then let
exactly.
me message towards that. So I really, really love that. And the other thing is more of a just a comment than anything, but Ash, I think, does a really good job of this in his post purchase surveys, where you actually have what, like a 4 or 5 question post purchase survey that has some fairly they're not like super complex, high cognitive load questions, but they're incredibly informative to you. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I mean, it's like how Sarah said, grabbing a lot of information from the comments or even reviews. I was gonna just say like even post purchase survey is such a great place to acquire. One of the questions we asked is, what are you hoping to achieve like right away, right? So like that will give me at least a consensus of, okay, is my like marketing message bringing in the right person? Is my landing page selling to that problem? And then are they solidifying it with their answer of, "Yeah, I'm actually trying to solve this problem," right? So, like, there's that
That's
linear
such a
relationship
good
all the
one.
way through.
That's such a
Um,
good one. Mostly because, and I want to like, sorry, caveat that one point, like, what were you looking to solve immediately, right? Like right now, at the very
right,
beginning, you guys put a qualifier on it, which is something that like nobody else does. I'm like, you
yeah,
have to separate out people's lives for them because people don't compartmentalize very well. Not
right,
everybody. Some people do fantastically. But the fact that you added that on there gives people something to actually like separate. Like, what's my immediate goal versus my long term
yep,
goal? And that affects your AOV and LTV, 100%.
it does. I
So smart.
and I think, like, I think what we've done differently this year versus, like, last year, um, has been very, like, specific messaging, right? So, like, I think even I love when Rabah says this, but it's like when you're selling to everybody, you're selling to no one, right? So it's like if you can really
Yeah, yeah.
pinpoint the specific problem that somebody is going to want to fix right away, like even like let's say if I have let's say I have my receding hairline or my skin's breaking out or my nails are breaking, right? In my head, I have a list of priorities, right? Of those three, right? If maybe the hair is the first priority, I need to nail that first before I go in and say like, "Hey, well, this is gonna solve all three things." But like in my head, I'm like, "Okay, but is it really gonna solve the hair issue?" So that's where I think allowing your consumer to give you that feedback like right off the bat, and like I don't really care about how many people answer it. I just want to know that I'm on the right track, you know what I mean? And then even like going a step further is what information would be relevant to you right now, right? So like a lot of people do respond and say like, "Hey, like what's the best way to use this product?" right? Like what are some recipes? Um what are some like results, this and that. Like people aren't like sold yet, so they want to get that additional information. So like playing into that is also pretty key because then one, like if somebody really wants recipes, hey, we have a recipe, right? If somebody wants to see more transformations or like testimonials, send them to the community, right? So those like one or two questions that are like super key for you can like change the whole trajectory of like you said, the LTV model of everything. So speaking of that, right? Like even just like getting those answers, right? I had a question for you, which is if say for example somebody's coming in and say like, hey, I really want to fix my hair, right? Do you look at it versus like, okay, I'm going through like say hair loss issue, or I'm going through a hair loss issue because I went through X surgery, right? Now do you pick the broad or the more specific and try to tailor the messaging around that?
Yeah. This is such a good question. I actually get this one a lot
Great
too.
question.
Should I go granular or should
Yeah,
I go broad, right? I think this truly depends on how quickly you want to get people in the door. If you go
right,
broad, you're going to get a lot of people coming in under the same bucket, but then you have to individually dump them into the right funnel eventually, right? Which is what we
right,
used to do in paid advertising because we had top, middle, and bottom. It used
right,
to naturally do it for you. Now that everybody's coming under the same exact creative, you are having to separate them out manually, basically, through your newsletters, through any of your community stuff, through your organic. Like now people have to separate themselves out, which is messy, right? Like it just gets
Right.
too ridiculous.
Right.
So in my opinion, I like to test messaging broad and convert granular, if that makes sense. So I want to test new messaging in particular, new creative in particular, big, broad concepts. Like, are we going after keto? Are we going after intermittent fasting? Like, who are we going after? And then once we've hit one that's like, yes, this one works really well. Keto's fantastic. Then I will take that and start converting people off of like minor tweaks to the messaging. So we'll go keto for moms. We'll go keto for like gym rats. We'll go keto for guys, like teeny tiny little ones. But that messaging comes out through the rest of our brand, not necessarily paid advertising. Paid advertising is expensive as hell. So like if we're going to do paid, I want to get as many people in the door for as cheap as I possibly can at the top. And then take those people and nurture them based upon empathetic messaging through everything else I have available for them.
Tactically, how are you doing that, right? So like say, let's take the keto example, right? Super broad, bringing in like, hey, this
Yeah.
is great for keto diet, whatever. Within that, like you said, you have like 4 to 6 different, just keto for women, keto for men would probably be completely different, right? Tactically,
Yeah.
how are you doing that? Like, is it completely, I guess, because you said that you're not really doing it through the paid stuff, but like, how are you tactically kind of showcasing that message on the website? Like, is it landing pages? Like, how are you separating that out?
Yeah. So the interesting part is people will basically tell you where they go on your site after they go through it. So a lot of times this has to do with we've landed on one landing page, I clicked, I purchased, right? But we don't follow them after that, obviously. We can't through a paid standpoint. But what we can do is we can follow them from like just a communication customer standpoint. So some people do this, not everybody does. I like to do follow-up emails that are like, hey, you purchased, like, what did you think? Can we get some feedback? You'll get very, very low amounts of people that will comment back and be like, we loved it, whatever it is. Then I will go through, though, from that stack of people that actually commented back and pull out the ones that actually look like they're going to be very good, long-term, solid customers and start a conversation that has nothing to do with their purchase, right? So I want to talk to this person of like, can you tell us what your life is like? What are you into? Like, what do you watch on TV? Like, we're going to get kind of nosy just because we want to know more about you. So instead of always coming at it from a tactical standpoint of like, we're trying to figure out how to push more money out of this person, I just want to get to know them. And this comes into customer interviews, which is tough. Some people don't have the time or the money to invest in that. I think
Yep.
it's one of the most underrated places to get information. Is just interviewing your customers throughout your year just to find out who they are, what they're doing. That's where I would go first. And then you can build that into like, okay, this person is doing this with their life. They're really like deep values here and here and here. Let's build a landing page. Let's try a new funnel type of a thing. Information first and then build.
How do you feel about
I'm super
utilizing
in.
quizzes
Go ahead, Ash.
prior to like using the quizzes like first in like the initial standpoint? Because then one, you can get all the information and then tailor it versus get them in the door and then tailor it. Like, what are your thoughts there?
Yes. I love quizzes. I wish we would use them more. Quizzes are great to use because they're fun. They pull in a big gamification type of a relationship with the brand. And the more fun you can make the environment that you've built for your customers, the longer they will stay. Because they want to see if you have more things that they can just stay and enjoy. Because like life is hard and we're exhausted and we just want to escape our brains half the time. So anytime you can gamify it would be fantastic. Not just for like, what's your favorite flavor, A, B, and C, but like, what kind of a dog do you like best, A, B, and C? What kind of like hobbies do you do on the weekend, A, B, and C? Because all of that information will tell you something about that person. If you don't see anybody checking, D, I like to go hiking, then you don't produce any content that has hiking in it. Like, you're also disqualifying is what we're trying to
Right.
do. We're not just trying to qualify people, we're trying to disqualify things that they're not into as well. Because it just helps us like tweak and tweak and tweak and tweak until we get on the exact right path. And then we stay on that path until we see something change. Super smart. Love quizzes. Oh, so smart.
Powerful quizzes. A few things there. One, so kind of going to take you guys off into the weeds, but it'll make sense. So I'll start with you, Ash, and I'll go to you, Sarah. What do you think the number one reason is people go from rich to poor? What's your guess, Ash?
Money management? Poor money management? Wait, yeah,
Be
I don't know.
be a little bit more
Can you clarify the question?
so like I'm super rich, right? And then I do X, and then X makes me super poor. And now I'm no longer rich. What do you think X is? Because you're right with
Shit.
money management. Money management's like the
Spending money.
broad category.
Yeah. Spending money on things that you don't need to impress people that don't matter.
Fantastic answer. Way to make up for the money management cop out. What about you, Sarah?
I would say it's probably a self-valuing issue. Feeling
Interesting.
worthless.
And then
Specifically feeling like you don't deserve what you have.
right, but then how does that manifest in? Because that's the cause, but I'm talking about kind of like the manifestation of it. You guys are killing me. You're just totally taking my thunder. I should just get to the punchline.
I was gonna say, you're looking for a specific answer. I'm not sure we're gonna give it to you.
Well, I
What's
just
the
figured you guys would be
punchline?
like, kind of what Ash was saying. Yeah, like Ash was saying, like you just spent too much money on dumb shit. Like that's what most people say, right? Like you bought yachts or you bought an island or
Yeah.
you bought just a bunch of dumb shit. That's what I said. Absolutely 0% correct. What's actually correct is making bad investments. Why? Now, the reason why is going back to, so here's the tie-in with kind of the psychology and not everything. When you're buying Birkin bags and fancy shoes and going on crazy vacations, there's still something in the back of your head saying, hey, maybe I'm spending a little bit too much money. However, when you say, hey, this is an investment, all of those little kind of tripwires are bypassed. And so
Oh
what I'm
yeah.
trying to get at
Yes.
is like what Sarah's talking about in terms of framing, understanding, empathy can be super powerful. And that's kind of to round out the whole point is like when you talk about buying a watch or something really, really expensive, the number one thing they tell you, it's an investment. And so, anyways, I thought that was just a cool little anecdote in terms of how psychology really works because you have like people, what you said earlier in the show, people don't do a good job of compartmentalizing. How I say that? Did I say it right? Yes. Putting things into
Compartmentalizing.
compartments,
Yeah.
silos, if you will. But you know
Yeah.
what they do a good job of? Or at least people that are fairly, monetarily educated, is people have different pockets of money. And people also have different, in their different kind of favorite things. So for example, for me, you guys know I'm a big sneakerhead. I've spent like a bazillion dollars on sneakers. I bought some really, really crazy expensive sneakers, but then I'll see like a nice pair of dress shoes for like $400 or $500. And I gasp and I clutch my pearls. And it's
You're
just so
like, oh my
crazy.
God,
Yeah. Somebody would
that's
pay that
so
much for
expensive.
dress shoes. What's going on? I have $7,000 shoes. Like, it's so nonsensical. And
That's
so,
hilarious.
just understanding, I think the broader point is understanding not only being able to be empathetic, but that empathy is going to be derivative of your understanding of the customer, which is going to be derivative of the information you can gather, whether that be quizzes or customer interviews or what have you.
Yes.
That's going to help you
Yes.
understand how you can psychologically appeal to these people, because if not, it's going to be really challenging because they might want to buy what you're selling. It's just that you have approached them in such a way that almost attacks their being. Like it attacks their ego. It attacks kind of what they stand for. And then they're going to tell you to F off versus if you do it the other way, they're going to give you
Yeah.
commas in the account. So anyways, that was just kind of the
Yeah.
random
Well, and to
digression there.
Rabah's point though, too, this goes deep into language and communication. And I think this is something we do not talk enough about in marketing, which is hilarious because like there's a whole profession, right? Copywriting is like directed towards language and communication. But from what I've seen, they get taught a specific type of language communication, which is always persuasion-based language communication. I've never seen a copywriter that knows a whole lot about like other forms of communication, which I find really interesting. But the language itself is 100% the game. If you cannot nail your messaging, there's no reason for you to be spending money on paid because you're just going to be dumping money out the door. But it's interesting that you kind of like caveat that way, right? Like the difference between somebody who has a lot of money and someone who lost all their money is they thought of it differently, right? Like one of this, I'm just purchasing something, or on this side, I'm investing in something. The label that you use for things directly affects the behavior that comes out of that belief. So no
Yes.
matter what, you could be going into, I'm purchasing this to fix my thinning hair. But the fact that you labeled thinning hair is a part of the process that you're going through to purchase that product. And every brand has a different customer that has different labels for everything that they're coming into contact with. And this is based off of, I mean, for me, 34 years of associations that I've built and like concepts that I've understood and like incorrect things that I've logged in my brain. So every time we message something, we have to know exactly how these people are labeling it and what to change it to or what to stick with. Because how you label things will directly affect your bottom line 100% of the time. Sorry, I digress.
No, I love that.
No,
Okay,
it
so
makes sense.
for me, so I'm a huge fan of David Ogilvy. He's like one of my muses, just a G. And to be fair, like a lot of the up and coming, or a lot of marketing was really steeped in copywriting because that was the medium of the day, right? Magazines, newspapers, like those are the creative that you had to work
Yeah.
with. They didn't have the Facebook news feed, they didn't have Insta, TikTok, like all these other things. But David Ogilvy would literally immerse himself in that client. And so he did a campaign for Rolls Royce and he literally read through all the engineering docs, all the specs, everything like that. And he came up with the line that at 60 miles an hour, the only thing you're going to hear is the electric clock. Like that's the loudest thing in the
Is the
car at
clock.
60
Yeah.
miles an hour. And like he was just such
Yeah.
a master at understanding all of this and then being able to really synthesize all of that and then just have these little stinger headlines where just like, oh my gosh, like he says so much by saying so little. And I think that is something that has been lost a lot in copywriting because you can, you get some great UGC or something and you just turn it to 11 and there's not the necessity for it anymore. But I agree with you
Yeah.
that like, great copy can really form, and to your point, allow people to label the transaction in such a way that it makes sense for them. Cause like who's going to tell their significant other or tell themselves that like thinning hair it's better to have the thinning hairline than it is to spend this $40 on this amazing collagen that's going to give my hairline back. Like it's a no brainer. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? And you start to build this
Yeah.
value equation that makes sense where people can really, you're giving them the ability to have the ammunition to then fight the battle to make the purchase with themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. It's empowerment. You
Even
got to empower your customers to feel like it's okay to part with money because money is 100% how we built this entire country. And that's based upon a whole lot of history that goes into the religious side that comes into this country, how we actually left powers that were like trying to stifle us financially, how we kind of broke free from that, and how we actually built a country out of that. So, like, these values are here and they're not going away very fast. So, like, again, this goes back to what we were talking about at the very beginning. We have to work with what's already in place with the consumers. Otherwise, you're just fighting an uphill battle with these people because they already believe something. We just need to cater to what they already believe in and message correctly towards it. I
Boom.
say that like it's
Mic
easy. I'm
drop.
like, that's all you have to do. It's
And
not
that's
that
it.
big of a deal. Like,
And then just print and then just sit back and print money.
it's
That's how it
so
works, right?
easy. Just print the money out. It's fine. Just buy yourself a money printer. It's easy.
there's
Yeah.
actually a couple things that
Are
we
you guys ready for some
noticed like
questions?
recently within like
Go
our
ahead, Ash.
ads. Yeah, I mean, like even right, like in the last couple of days, we're doing a lot of analysis on like our creative performance and seeing where like I've been preaching over the last year, like test, like 40, 50 creatives a week. Where I'm kind of like going back on myself now, where it's like, do I really need to do that, or do I need to like test a lot and then find these like very key winners that I can just continuously just improve on, right? So there was a video that had like a really high thumb stop rate, a really high hold rate, converting like really, really well. And I broke down the video drop off, right? So from 25 to 50% to 75% to 100%, right? There was a really big drop off from 75% to 100%, right? So I'm trying to like go within the video, see what that timeline looked like and what was being said at that moment. What I realized is that in those like few seconds, there was testimonials from customers, right? The first two testimonials were talking about how the product made them feel, what their daily routine was like after using the product. The third and fourth testimony, which would have fallen under that where that supposed drop off was, is them just saying like, "Oh, I lost 50 pounds, I lost 70 pounds, this and that," right? That's not like relatable to the consumer because it's like, okay, well, how do I know if that's actually real or not, right? But the like more, I guess, achievable and like understandable like results and like the part around like the routine is a little bit more digestible. So I think that's where like I told my video editor, hey, take this part out. Let's replace it with something a little bit more like less aggressive in terms of like I lost like 100 pounds and see if we can actually improve that hold rate just a little bit more. And then that just relates back to like the overall performance, right? So to your point, Sarah, it's like just trying to level with the consumer is so key because like as a marketer, I'm like, oh shit, my product can help you lose 100 pounds. You should buy this. But on the other side, it's like, okay, well, what if that's not achievable for me? I need to kind of like tone it down and be a little bit more
Yeah.
digestible, right?
Yeah, 100%. Especially because at that point, you may have hooked a lot of people who only want to lose 20 pounds. If they heard 50 to 100 pounds, they may be like, oh, this isn't for me. This is for extreme weight loss. And they
Extreme,
immediately
yeah.
categorize you in extreme weight loss. Right. So you have to be so
It's
careful with
interesting.
numbers when you come into this like creative standpoint. The other thing I will say too is smart, smart, smart. So Ash is like one of the smartest marketers I've ever seen because he recognizes things and fixes it. Like, I wish everybody would do this. Recognize a problem and fix the overall global problem. Don't fix just that one creative. So for you guys, I don't think you need to be doing 40 to 50 creatives a week. That's a lot. That's a lot of creatives going into the system. We need to start with maybe 5 to 10 pillars of like, this is what we're testing, and then get granular after that, right? Like I said, start with your global, get granular after you've had a winner come up very consistently from your emotional standpoint, from your emotional motivators are coming up first. So smart, really, really smart.
Appreciate it.
This one got a handle on it, doesn't it? How did this turn into an Ash pump-up podcast? What the hell? Is there some greasing of palms going on here? What's going on, Milwaukee? Amazing.
I've only talked to him like twice. I think this is the second time I've gone on the phone with him. Yeah, smart.
Powerful Ash. I got my chew on this box, by the way. I haven't opened it yet because I'm going to do you a fun unboxing, but thank you for sending that. Those are cool.
Of course.
Also,
Of
shout out
course.
Fantastic Podcast. We're starting a podcast network, by the way, so we need to talk. We need to recruit for Q1 or something. Come on.
Go
Come to
Ash.
daddy. Come to daddy.
Oh,
You guys up for some questions?
yes.
Yes, let's do it.
Amazing. Sorry about the bad internet here too. You guys are doing a great job with the I'm like war correspondent over here. I like say something and it takes like, oh yeah, and we're here on the ground with Ashman Milwani. How's the weather out there? The weather's great, Rabah. So sorry about that for everybody listening. We'll try and clean it up a little bit in post. So obviously the big thing going down right now, unless you've been living under a rock, and if you have been, it's okay. That's what the podcast is here for. There's something called OpenAI. OpenAI just released a product called ChatGPT 3, which is essentially the Oracle, or as close to the Oracle as there is, where you can ask it some pretty crazy questions and it'll respond using the corpus of essentially the World Wide Web, the internet, to understand and then give you back a really, really amazing answer. They launched it, I think, last week, and there's already over 1 million users. So it's really, really crazy. But one, have you guys had a chance to play around with it? And then two, what do you think of it? We'll start with you, Ash, and then I'll go to you, Sarah.
I haven't got a chance to use it yet. I've been seeing like screenshots of like people
Okay.
asking questions and like very thoughtful responses. I think it's very interesting. I think it's a little scary, but I think it can be used I feel like it could be a tool for a lot of, like, especially, like, marketers too. Like, I've had this, like, period where I'm kinda, like, running out of ideas, right? Like, when it comes to, like, ad copy, or even just, like, how do I phrase certain things without being sounding so mundane? I think by inputting certain, questions, or even, like, phrases, getting something out that's a little bit more different than what you're probably used to kind of resparks that, like, that creative, flame. So I'm interested to see how people utilize it in their, I guess, their branding or their marketing messaging. The only concern I have is, and again, you can obviously fix this after the fact, but, like, it starting to sound like everybody's starting to sound the same, right? So I
Yeah.
think using it for a way to, like, get ideas and inspiration, but then obviously putting your flair on it, and a little bit of your branding on it too. But definitely a tool worth checking out. I think.
What about you, Sarah?
Yeah. I this is really interesting because the first experience I had with the OpenAI was actually off of a TikTok video, because I'm on TikTok way too much. Somebody asked the AI to rewrite the Gettysburg Address as if they were speaking to a 5-year-old, which I was just like,
It's amazing.
yes, I would love to watch this, because I was like, the Gettysburg Address is so long and so complicated, and it's got such intricate language that, like, when I had to memorize it in high school, I was like, this is the dumbest assignment ever. So the interesting part, though, was the end result was literally just like, why are we here? What are we doing? If we're not trying, then what's the purpose? And that was it. I was like, I get it now. And I think this is why the AI is so useful, because it distills information down to a, like, manageable, digestible form, I guess you could say. So I think, like, to Ash's point, this is going to be useful for basically taking very large technical speak and making it accessible to anybody, which is huge because it's very difficult for the human mind. Even copywriters struggle with this. They'll write hundreds of headlines before they land on like 2 or 3
Right.
that are viable. So this will, I mean, can you imagine how fast this will speed up your ability to distill information? It'll just be like instant. You won't have to write hundreds. You could just like, okay, AI, take this piece of copy and then distill it down to one sentence, and it'll go boop and just does it. I'm like blown away. I think it's going to be a game changer. I hate using that word, but yes, I think it's amazing.
So we had our head of customer success, and he actually built a whole knowledge base using it. Um,
Oh,
and
oh,
it actually was not horrible. There is so before I rant a little more, I want a quick piercing question. Do you think and we'll start with you this time and then go to you next, Ash. Do you think it's a replacement or an augmentation for marketers? Start with you, Sarah, and then you next, Ash. Replacement or augmentation?
augmentation. I'm going to say
Amazing.
augmentation. I don't think that there's any replacement for being a human. It's very difficult to replace so far. I mean, I think they'll probably get there someday, but yeah, right now I think it's very important to have a human involved.
What
Yeah,
about you, Ash?
same page. But I don't think it can replace the human. I think it can replace a lot of possible services that are already out there, um, which may or may not be human run. So
Okay.
Yeah.
There's definitely some serious, in my opinion, like from putting on like the business econ, some real implications to SEO. Where why would I go to Google, go search through all these articles and search results when I can just be like, give me 10 headlines for award-winning collagen that speak to hair loss. And then you get, these 10 headlines, and if they're 80 to
Yeah.
90% there,
Yeah.
that also helps you alleviate kind of that 0 to 1 problem that you're talking about, right? Ash, you're always trying to be a genius of like, oh shit, I got to create a create the wheel over and over and over again, where it's like, you just say, oh, create the wheel. Like, oh, I'm going to put some new rims on it, or I'll put new tires on this one, or, maybe I'll put an extra wheel on it or something. But okay, this is something I have to share because it just blew me away. It was one of the craziest ones. So this was a gal named Cynthia Savard Saucier. Sorry if I'm butchering your name. but she asked OpenAI to write a letter to my son explaining that Santa isn't real and we make up stories out of love. That was the prompt. Here's the actual letter that the OpenAI generated, which is absolutely insane. So get your tissues or whatever you need because the waterworks might hit. But dear Emil, I hope this letter finds you well. I'm writing to let you know that I'm not a real person, but a character that your parents have told you stories about out of love. As you grow older and become more curious about the world around you, you may start to question the existence of Santa Claus and other magical beings. It's important for me to let you know that I'm not a real person who lives at the North Pole and delivers presents to good boys and girls on Christmas Eve. Your parents have told you stories about me and my elves as a way to bring joy and magic into your childhood. They wanted you to believe in the spirit of giving and the magic of the holiday season. I want you to know that the love and care that your parents have for you is real. They have created special memories and traditions for you out of love and a desire to make your childhood special. As you continue to grow and learn, remember to always believe in the magic of love and kindness. And always remember that even though I'm not a real person, the spirit of Santa Claus lives on in the hearts of those who believe in the magic of the holiday season. Merry Christmas, Santa Claus. What the fuck?
Jesus.
Here,
Right?
I gotta go call my
Feels,
mom.
right?
Dang. Now
Like
that's a letter
that-
you should send to your kids.
Right. I mean, that is incredible.
Wow. I mean, I'm impressed. That deserves a golf clap. I'm like,
That's-
whoa.
That was so, like,
Wow.
that was one of the things I totally agree with you
Especially for
guys.
like, especially for like
100%.
having like such a short prompt. I mean, she didn't tell it anything else. Just like read a letter to my son so that we could tell him that Santa's not real. That's it. She didn't say like make it empathetic, like put a lot of like work into it, make sure that you don't freak him out. Nothing. Just like write it. And the AI was like, cool, here you go. I'm
So
just like,
impressive. So
all
impressive.
right,
Blown away.
that's intense.
Blown away. Absolutely. So I think I'm with you 100%. I think the augmentation is absolutely there. And I think there's a certain aspect of I'm pretty sure the book is actually called Bullshit. And there's a really interesting parallel to what the OpenAI is producing and Bullshit, because there's a very, not that you can't get in-depth insights, but it's very surface level. It's kind of like, and so I think that's what you guys are touching on. Like there's no panache, there's no like, it's like 80 to 90% there, but it's still, it's been one of the most transformative pieces of technology I've played around with in quite some time. And it's pretty incredible. We're actually trying to play around with it right now in terms of, we might be doing some sort of little chatbot / AI ads where you can create headlines, copy, ask about, like, you can ask it about attribution models. Like, it's wild. We're living in the future. It's insanity.
Crazy.
Let's see. What's some other fun ones? We'll start with you this time, Sarah, and then we'll go to you, Ash. What's the best ad you've ever seen?
Oh, the best ad I've ever seen. Jeez. All right, so now I have to like catalog like thousands of ads. Let me think. The best ad I think I've ever seen was one that was done. It was such a random one, but I saw it come up like over and over and over and over. And it was this ad that just had like a mom and a son, and that was it. Like it didn't have too much on it. And then the headline at the very, very bottom was like something to the effect of like you can have this moment over and over. And it was selling life insurance, basically. And it was just like have this moment again and again and again. And that was it. And as soon as I saw it, I was like, this is such a random ad. Like, why is this coming up on my feed? Because I wasn't shopping for life insurance at the time. But it was funny because after that, I saw a lot of people sharing it in like some of the groups. I'm like, I just saw that ad. That's so weird. But it was so simple and there was nothing to it. It was just image and like have this moment again and again. And that was it. It was just perfect pairing of like psychology image and psychology copy. And that was probably the best one I've ever seen, which is, I have a hard time with this because I have like favorites from UGC and favorites from video and favorites from static. So I have a hard time picking one, but that's probably the closest. Yeah.
What do you got, Milwani?
I think I have a little bit more of a remedial answer, but Dr. Squatch, the soap
Yes,
commercials are
yes.
amazing.
They
Absolutely
have such good
amazing.
ads.
It's like it's just comedy. Like it just they're a minute to 2 minute long, but you just want to watch it because it's hilarious. The production value is there. Even if like you don't buy right away, it's now like in your mind, like, okay, this is an option for soap that I could buy. So it's like obviously it's not the direct response that everybody's working on right now, but like it's branding, it's hilarious, it's memorable. So I mean, shout out to them. Like all their ads are amazing.
Yeah, they do great work, don't they? And they do numbers as well, but, yeah, and they're long commercials. It reminds me of the OG, like, kinda Dollar Shave Club style, where it's, like, this super long commercial, but it's so good that you end up watching, like, all 3 to 5 minutes of it. Um, for people that are listening, they won't be able to get this one, but I'll have uh, describe it to you guys. Where is this? This is my favorite one of my favorite ads of all time. Um So let's see if it loads up. It's not, but essentially, it's this really turdy kind of like diatsu. There it is, and it's this really turdy minivan. But the headline is picks up 5 times more women than a Lamborghini. Like I'm obsessed with these old OG like car ads. They're so good. That's one of my favorites. But
Yes.
anyway, we'll share it in the show notes. But we got some good. There's some good advertisers out there. There is. Okay, let's do one more question, and then we can wrap up. Let's see, where's my things here? Okay. Oh, this is a good one. We'll start with you, Ash, and then we'll go to you, Sarah. What's something marketers think is really important when it comes to great ad creative that actually doesn't matter or matter much?
Um, Honestly, this might ruffle some feathers, but like I really don't. I mean, it's important, but I think it's at the bottom of the food chain. But like ad copy, because I feel like a lot of people are just watching videos or kind of like looking at images, whatever it is, and like that's gonna be your focal point. I don't think like split testing like small nuances in ad copy is gonna move the needle. Um, so yeah, I would have to say ad copy.
Amazing. What about you, Sarah?
Yeah. I, I'm probably gonna have to agree with Ash with like one caveat to it. Copy is only important when the person who actually is looking for your product lands on your ad. Usually we can process images about 60,000 times faster than text, but they've done a lot of studies, tons of studies about the fact that the motivation of the person reading the ad will affect the effectiveness of the ad. So your copy matters a lot. Changing like, you know, one little word, especially if it's something that doesn't pertain to the overall message, doesn't really matter all that much. Now, I've heard a lot of people talk about, well, we've got like 19% conversion, like lift off of just changing these hearts to stars. You're gonna hear those like random one-offs that are happen all the time. Um, but overall, I think the important part of the ad and the creative itself is actually the image first, and then the messaging second. Copy, I should say, not the myth. Yeah, I'd agree.
Yeah, I'm with you guys. I think
Love it.
my vote would be the end of videos. I had in my previous life an agency, and we were working with this client, and we were testing: should we have a logo at the end? Should we have this at the end, et cetera, et cetera? And then you look at the actual like watch times, and the ads like 30 seconds long. And like after like 5 to 7 seconds, like everybody's left. And you're like, why are we putting any effort into the end of this ad? Like nobody's even watching it, but yet this is gonna be
Nobody's
like this
watched.
like explosive growth
Yep.
moment. I don't know. Sometimes you just have to smile and nod, but those are great answers. Um, all right, Moani, you want to wrap it up? Do you got any other parting words? Want to talk about anything else hot on your mind?
Uh, Really cool thing we did. Which is why I tweeted out yesterday, right? Like 3 things that we're really like doing. One of the things was creative performance. which I don't think, I mean, we kind of got into it a little bit today, but really cool tidbit. We got a video from an influencer who does typically pretty well for us. Thumb stop ratio was like really low, and so the CAC was like really high. Not a lot of people were getting through the video, but we kind of chopped up the first like 3 to 5 seconds and doubled the thumb stop ratio. The rest of the video kind of remained the same, but it actually halved our CPA, which was really interesting, and it actually turned it from like a
Amazing.
really shitty ad to like something that was really good. So, quick tidbit, make sure you're going back, and like now I'm going back and looking at all of our creatives that like had decent stats that I kind of like, kind of put to the side, and like we're bringing them back and iterating on them. But yeah, that's my whole thing for December, is that prepping for January, going back and getting creatives that were almost winners that couldn't probably still perform pretty well with some changes. But yeah.
It's a good one. That's a great one. What about you, Sarah? Any closing words, and then we'll throw it over to you to sign off.
Yeah. So the one thing that we're kind of looking forward to in 2023, we have quite a lot of stuff shifting. Obviously, we just kind of created this giant agency, and we did all of this stuff about creative, just creative strategy in general. We've noticed that this is one of the biggest holes in the industry right now. It's just like this giant canyon that can't be filled yet. So one of the things I'm focusing on next year is actually training up as many people as I possibly can to fill these particular roles, because we have a few clients on the agency side. But one thing we noticed very quickly was that you have to be really, really well integrated into the brand to be able to do this correctly. You have to know everything from the influencers that they're working with to their naming conventions to their ad account structure. Like, you have to know so much about it. So we're pivoting a little bit more towards the education side so that we can start actually training some people up to fill these roles. Because so far, nobody else is capable of training or has the time to do it. So that's something we're going to be focusing on in 2023, is just developing basically a curriculum for training this out, which we kind of have, because we sort of like soft launched a little bit of a course to kind of test and see if people would be interested in like a full, basically like an academy university type style training, and had really good reception. So that's something we're doing in 2023, which is terrifying. Fun and terrifying.
Ooh, I love that. Let's actually chat more, because we're putting together a media buying slash just overall business curriculum. So we launched Triple Whale University. You can go access it, triplewhale.com/university. But it ended up morphing into basically like product videos, right? Like how to use Triple Whale, et cetera, et cetera. This is how you can do this. This is how you can do that. And the actual
Yeah.
original idea and thesis was kind of more in your vein of like, how can we show people how to run a profitable D2C company? And so we should definitely connect, because that's really, really interesting to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Amazing people helping people.
It's so funny
Sarah,
you say that, because that was the end goal, was like, we want to basically build like a brand university. Sorry, go ahead.
no, amazing. Yeah, that's fantastic. I can't believe we actually got through the war correspondent. I'm so sorry, everybody. We'll try and clean up as much of this in post. Ash and Sarah have been incredible with my insanely like 3-second delay responses. It's actually been really funny to watch. So at least I get a little kick out of it. But Sarah, where can the people find you? Are you taking clients? How can they work with you? This time is yours.
Yes. So you can go find me over on Twitter. I'm there basically all day, every day. At Sarah Levinger. That's SarahLevinger. And then if you want to kind of check out the agency and what we're doing over there, we're going through a rebrand again. Mostly because the original brand was literally just I needed something. And so I went to Canva and just picked a logo and picked colors, which
Wow.
is probably not the best way to do it. But your own work gets like pushed to the side every time. So we're going through a proper rebrand this time. And you can go over to hgperformancecreative.com. Otherwise, we are going to be doing a lot of stuff, like I just said, on the actual education side. That's going to be launching, I believe, probably January, sometime mid-January. So be on the lookout for that.
Amazing. All right, Milwani, delayed or not, and this will probably take like 5 seconds to go across the internet and hit you in New Jersey. What do the people need to do when they go buy a vitamin shop?
If you go buy a vitamin shop, I want you to walk in those doors, go to the collagen section, find some Avi, pick it up, send me a picture, tweet at me at ashramelwani, or what else? Mentor Pass. I'm on a Mentor Pass. Q1's coming around the corner.
Mentor
Need
Pass.
some strategy for Q1. If you're in health and wellness, hit me up. Um, Other than that, Ron and I started a podcast called Chew on This. Hopefully you've seen it on the Twitters. But definitely check that out, and hit me up if you want some free swag.
Yeah, it's a really awesome pod, and you guys are naturals. You guys are really great. What are we doing? What's the code word this time? If people made it all the way through the episode, they can get some triple whale swag. What's the code word? What should we do?
Sarah, what do you think?
I think we should probably do the word compartmentalize because everybody's
gonna know how to spell that.
I love it.
Although that's really hard to spell, so maybe we should do something shorter.
We're gonna do an
I feel bad.
audible. If you DM me or Ash the word empathy, that's it. Now it's compartmentalization shit that I can't.
There you go.
pronounce.
That's way better.
I feel like Billy Madison with the Z and the
That's
risotto.
empathy.
Like I can't make a
That's
Z
way
in
better.
cursive. So empathy. DM me or Ash empathy. In the
Empathy.
Twitters, and we'll get you hooked up with some triple whale swag. We have some amazing swag now. We did a collab with Jambies. It's like silk. It's so good. Jambies. What else we do? We did a collab with. I'll have to send you one, Ash. They're amazing. Do you like belt bags? Do you wear the like the fanny pack belt bags? I have to send you one.
I don't, but I
They're
could learn
sick.
to love them.
They're sick. It's really sick. They're pretty
That's
dope.
amazing.
But all right, folks, that's it. That's another one in the books. Sarah, thank you so much. Ash, always a pleasure, my friend. If you want to get more involved with Triple Whale, it's triplewhale.com. We have a wonderful newsletter that goes out every Tuesday, Thursday called Whale Mail. You can sign up right at triplewhale.com/whale mail. And then be sure to subscribe, leave a review on the podcast, subscribe to the YouTube channel if you like to see our pretty faces. Adspend did pretty well. We were in like the top 10% or something. I have to send you actually the Spotify wrap. Pretty good numbers. Really, really good stuff. ROAS is
Awesome.
as well. So we have a sister podcast called You're Not Your ROAS, where I interview other operators in the space. And then Jan 1, we just acquired a podcast network, and Jan 1, we're launching the Triple Whale network. So be on the lookout for that. But all the things coming down the pike. Again, Ash, you're the best. Sarah, always a pleasure. We'll talk to you soon. That's it, folks. Bye.